Welcome back to another episode of Kerah Speaks. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, we are in another location. And I say if you are watching on YouTube because Kerah Speaks is now a podcast. So all the episodes that you have previously seen on YouTube, all 32 episodes are now available on Kerah Speaks the podcast, available on Apple and Spotify Play podcast, as well as iHeart. So you can be able to listen wherever you are. If you're going to the gym, if you're on your commute to work, whatever you want to do, you can listen to Kerah Speaks podcast. So go ahead and check that out right now. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you like and share this video as well as subscribe. But as you all can see, we are in a different location. This is a season of transition, and I want to do something a little different now. The content that you're going to start receiving from now on, now that it's a podcast, is going to be more authentic. I got to be honest with you guys. I don't feel like I have been my authentic self. Not to say that I've been fake, but I feel like the past 32 episodes, I have been trying to curate an experience. I have been trying to make sure that I say the right thing in an effort to get people to understand where I'm coming from. But I realize me being Kerah is what draws people to me. It's my energy. It's the Holy Spirit in me, and me just being me and saying the things that I say that comes off the top of the dome. That's what really draws people in. So from now on, y'all, I'm going to make sure that I am being 100% myself. You know, graduating therapy was no small feat for me. It meant everything to me. And I want to be able to share those experiences. I'm not a therapist. You know what I'm saying? I'm nobody's therapist. And I don't need to try to act like one. I don't need to try to pretend to be one. I don't need to be using therapeutic language. I don't have to say anything that isn't true to who I am. And, I'm not going to always say the words right. I'm not going to get everything right. I'm not going to, I might fumble over my words sometimes, but that's what editing is for. So I'm going to show more of my personality on here. And I'm going to give it to y'all real and uncut, because when I wrote my book, Healing Cost Me Everything, that's available right now on my website, kerahspeaks.com. That was real. That was real. It was, I don't want to say polished, but it was definitely coming from a place of clarity. So it may seem polished and might seem distant, but that was by design. But it was real. It was me. It was my real feelings. And I want to give that into my YouTube, and I want to give that on the podcast. I want to give the real. I want you guys to be able to see me, and instead of trying to write things down to make sure that I'm hitting all the points, I don't want to do that no more. Of course I'm going to have, my bullet points of whatever topics I want to talk about, but it's going to be straight up. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to give it to y'all straight up. So that's what, from here on out, we're going to give it to y'all, or I'm going to give it to y'all straight up, no cut, just as my thoughts, as who they are, as who Kerah is truly. Kerah is going to speak on here and give y'all exactly my true thoughts without trying to curate it. You're going to listen, receive it how you're going to receive it, and we're going to go from there. So today we're going to talk about the courage to stay in the room during conflict. Now, I talked about this on some previous episodes before. I was talking about, how conflict was so difficult for me, and, how I just used to hate conflict. But I realized it wasn't the conflict that I hated. I hated the defensiveness that I used to come in contact with. If you follow me on TikTok, my TikTok, Kerah Speaks, I talk about how sometimes, people who have issues with conflict, they're either one or two types of people. So some of those of us who want to stay in the room, and some of us who want to leave the room and run away from the conflict. I am one of the people who needs to stay in the room, because it was because of my anxious attachment. I felt like if I didn't stay in the room, and when I say stay in the room, I mean stay in the conversation, stay in the conflict. I felt like if I didn't stay in the conflict in that very moment, that if I left, that the relationship was going to end. That was a fear. I was afraid of the relationship ending or the relationship changing dramatically in a negative way. So I used to be like, no, we need to talk about this and we need to fix it, because if we don't fix it today, then we're never going to talk about it again. Resentment was going to build up, and I just had this uneasiness that if we don't talk about this conflict, the relationship is going to be messed up. And then you have this other type of people that feel like I need to leave because I'm getting overwhelmed in this conflict. Now, mine came from, not dealing with issues in childhood. When conflict came up, things would be swept under the rug and we would never talk about it again. So I had all of these emotions and all these thoughts that I never was able to get out. And it just built up over time, and it caused so much trauma, and it caused a strained and it strained my relationships, in the long run. So that's why I did not like leaving things as they were in conflict. It was the anxious attachment. Like, no, we have to talk about it. And so when that is met, when you want to stay in a room and that is met with somebody who wants to avoid the conflict, that can cause a lot of tension, because you are trying to cope in that moment. Like, you're both feeling the same thing. You're both feeling the same type of tension in your body. You're both feeling, the danger, or you're feeling like this is dangerous and unsafe, but you're just coping with it differently. And you won't know that unless you communicate. That's why it's important to know your friends or partners or family's coping skills, so you can better understand each other. Because as somebody who needs to stay in the conflict, whenever somebody wanted to run away, I felt like I was being abandoned. I felt like, oh, you don't care about me. You don't love me. You don't want to fix this. And to the other person, who needed to, leave the conflict or, run away from the situation, as to make them feel safe. Because I want to also be clear, when I say people want to run away, I simply mean they want to leave the situation or the conflict in order to feel safe. Because when people are in the conflict, it is overwhelming. Your senses are heightened. Your nervous system is on a high alert, and you want to get somewhere so you can process, right? With me, I wanted to process in the moment, but I understand now that some people need to step away to process. So that's what I mean by running away. But if you are a person who needs to leave the conflict in order to process, to you, somebody needing to stay might feel like, oh, you're trying to control me. You're trying to pressure me to stay in this. You want me to do something you want to do in the moment. But it's not that. For me, it was simply because, no, let's fix it, because I don't want the relationship to end. But the other person, they need to leave so they can feel safe. So it's about safety thing. They feel safe in leaving. I feel safe in staying. But it's just about communicating and say, hey, can we come to an agreement that, hey, okay, if you need to process, fine, just tell me you need to process. But as long as we come back to the conflict. So now, as I still don't like the conflict. I still feel the tension in my body. I still have the urge to want to stay in the conflict, as to not having issues in a relationship. But now what makes me feel safe is having a conversation with the people that I love. And, I have done that. And that's why it takes practice. Like, you have to do it in order to get comfortable with it. I have had conversations with my friends after we have had conflict, and I have expressed to them like what happens in my body when we have conflict, and my desire to talk about it in that moment. And they have talked to me, and I understand them and they understand me. And we both agree, like, as long as we come back, like, you can go and process, I'm a process, because it doesn't matter how regulated you are. Even the most regulated person needs time away to process. And I have found that, stepping away, I feel better. I feel better, because when I used to want to stay in the moment to get it, to repair it, I still didn't get all my words out. I would still leave without saying exactly what I would want to say. And so resentment would still build. So being able to walk away from the conflict and say, okay, I've had time to think about what I really want to say. Now that the emotions are out of it, I can think clearly. Now I can come back to the table. But, with my community, we agree that, hey, yeah, I might need time to process, but I will always come back. And that makes me feel safe. That makes me feel safe. Talk about what makes you feel safe during conflict. I think, instead of trying to get people to cope or communicate in the way that we do, I think that's what caused a lot of tension, a lot of people to bump heads. It's about a compromise. Let's meet in the middle. Me and my friend, we both said, like, we're not going to go, we might be upset with each other, but we're not going to go 24, well, we're going to go 24 hours, but we're not going to go no more than 24 hours without speaking to each other. After that, we coming back to the table and we're going to deal with it. We're not going to sweep it under the rug. We're not going to pretend like it did not happen. We are going to deal with it. And that it was a simple conversation. But if we were still operating in our wounded self, we would have just let that, just go. Okay, time that went by. Let's move on. But no, that's not how you resolve conflict. And I'm really thankful that I have a community where I can do that now. Because before, I wasn't doing that. I would be passive aggressive because, again, the anxious attachment, like, let's fix it. But at the same time, that's putting pressure on somebody that might need some time to process. So it's always about just practicing staying present during the conflict. That's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. That's all I have for you guys. Please leave me a comment below. Also, make sure that you go to Kerah Speaks, the podcast that is available right now. From here on out, guys, we're just going to live authentic. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to give it to you exactly how I feel. And I really hope and pray that it resonates with you. I'll see you guys next time right here on Kerah Speaks. We might be in a different location next time. Who knows? But trust me, we're going to be settled very, very soon. Follow this podcast and connect with me at kerahspeaks.com and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Kerah Speaks.